Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman, and I am thrilled that you've tuned in again this week. So as always, to our long-term listeners from 9 countries around the world, I want to say welcome back. Glad you're here. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode. On today's show, we're going to be covering a topic that we just barely touched on in one of the first few episodes, but we're going to talk about it in a very different way. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the business of being a chiropractor and how that stacks up compared to the business of being a medical doctor or some of the other professionals that work in healthcare, similar to the way that we do. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I continue to work in a $1 million practice that I built, ran, and sold. I've taught, lectured, and coached our profession, and helped so many chiropractors build the practice and the life of their dreams. And now, I want to help you do the same. So here's today's show. As I said in the introduction, today we're going to be talking about the reimbursement in chiropractic. No, I'm not going to spend any time talking about what you're charging per visit, not going to spend any time talking about what you charge for an adjustment versus any other ancillary things that you do in your office. We're going to be talking about the bottom line of the money that you make, the money that you keep for the loving service that you're providing to humanity as you dedicate yourself to the profession of providing great chiropractic care. So where do you sit financially compared to all the other chiropractors in our profession? It's a commonly held belief that chiropractors, while we do okay, we don't make a lot of money. And it's a commonly held belief that on average, chiropractors see about 100 visits a week and earn just less than $100,000 a year. I want to dig into that a little bit more, use the best research that I've been able to find from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, from the internet, a website called the White Coat Investor, and also from the most recent edition of Chiropractic Economics, and start pulling some of these pieces together to really figure out where are we, where are you, and most importantly in the end, where do you want to be going and growing? So pulling from the current research that I mentioned the sources earlier, the average chiropractor sees 111 visits a week on average and earns $95,000 a year. So that's not far off from what we've been quoting for so many years. Interesting, the volume hasn't changed and the salary hasn't changed, even though there's been significant inflation. The range of salaries is really interesting also, with the salary that a chiropractor earns being anywhere between roughly $40,000 and $145,000. And then when you really start to dig down, you can find that the bottom 10% of chiropractic doctors earns less than $39,000 a year, and the top 10% earns over $142,000 a year. But let's sidestep for just a minute. Looking at data from 2019, granted that was before we had this most recent inflationary bump, it said that the average income in the United States was $31,000 per person, according to the Census Bureau. In 2022, we have some more recent data, and we can break it down by age. Around age 25, the average income was $51,000, but the median was $41,000. At age 35, the average income was $75,000 and the median was $56,000. At age 45, the average income was $83,000 and the median income was $60,000. At age 55, the average income had risen to $82,000 and the median had risen to $65,000. And by age 65, the average comes down to $72,000 and the median is $55,000. And in case you have forgotten the difference between average and median, average is calculated by adding up all of the different values and then dividing that by the number of values. versus the median, you take all of the different salaries and line them up numerically, and the one that falls in the middle is then the median value. And that's why there's the difference between average and median in the numbers that I just quoted. I was also able to find numbers that are more recent and for 2024 with a slightly different skewing. Between the ages of 25 and 34, the average income is $56,000. Between 35 and 44, the average income is $68,000. Between 45 and 54 years old, the average income is $66,000. And at 65 plus, the average income is $54,000. Now again, that's not doctors, that's everybody in the United States. So it answers the question of, well, gee, are chiropractors rich or not? By definition, chiropractors earn approximately twice as much on average as the general population. So some people would say, yes, clearly chiropractors are rich, just like all doctors are. But what happens when we compare the numbers for the chiropractors compared to the medical community and other health providers at large? So let's start with all doctoral educated people. So that's chiropractors and medical doctors, and the person who has a doctorate in English, a doctorate in mathematics, so teachers, professors, attorneys, all of these different people that have a doctoral level education. The average of all doctoral educated people is $108,000. So as chiropractic physicians, we fall below that average. And while I said a moment ago that the average U.S. income in 2029 was $31,000 according to the U.S. Census Bureau, I was curious how that broke down as well. Well, if the average is 31, it means half is above it and half is below it. Let's talk about and visit with the half above the 31,000. It turns out that about 12% of people in the United States earn between $75,000 and $99,000 a year. 16% earn between $100,000 and $150,000. 9% earn between $150,000 and $199,000, and 12% of us in the U.S. earn over $200,000 a year. And the other 50% are down below the number that I quoted before to give you the average of 31. So now, but where do we chiropractors rank compared to other doctors, other healthcare providers? So again, according to the statistics that were published in the survey from Chiropractic Economics, issue number 8, May 19 of 2024, the average chiropractor works between 30 and 50 hours a week, so we'll call that 40 hours a week. And of their respondents, so those are the people who actually did respond to their call for the survey, the average skewed towards the higher end of $145,000 per year. The typical respondent in their study or in their survey owns their own practice, practices in the suburbs, sees 111 regular patient visits per week, and works an average of 35 hours per week. There was some interesting differences that they quoted based on the survey respondents of whether the practice was chiropractic only, multiple disciplinary, or an integrated practice. And I would encourage you to subscribe to Chiropractic Economics and at the very least pick up that specific edition if you're interested in some of the statistics that I'm quoting from so you can read the numbers for yourself. But if chiropractors earn somewhere between $40,000 and $150,000, and their average practice owner was earning $145,000, that's certainly not bad. How does that compare to the medical community and what those doctors are doing? Well, let's see. You have physicians like public health doctors and preventative medicine, pediatricians and family doctors who are earning in the neighborhood of $250,000, on average $100,000 more than chiropractic physicians. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's what's so. And yes, I think that's wrong. I think we chiropractors should be earning a lot more than that. And on the high end, you have neurosurgeons, plastic surgeons, and orthopedic surgeons who are earning in the $600,000 and $700,000 a year range. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any data available. I wasn't able to find any of how many hours a week they're working and what their patient volume looks like to be earning that kind of money. But I'm pretty darn sure that everyone listening to this podcast that's a chiropractor has been able to save patients from not having surgery. So they never got to the orthopedic surgeon, never went under the knife, and are living a better life because they never had that surgery. I also know that if you step up and tell people what you believe and what you know from your examination, from your history, from your education and your training, and you say that with the confidence and certainty of an orthopedic surgeon, when the surgeon says you absolutely need this surgery and you need it now, versus in the appropriate case, when you say to the person, you absolutely do not need surgery, you need this chiropractic care instead of the surgery, and you know what, based on everything that we've seen, you're going to be just fine. When you love them and lead them down that road, they don't have the surgery, you take care of the patient, and the universe rewards you both emotionally, psychologically, and financially for doing the right thing. So why you do what you do is incredibly important. You need to gain the confidence and certainty if you don't have it already. You need to make sure that when you step into the office or every time you speak with a patient, that confidence and certainty is dialed up to where it needs to be so that you can love and lead the patient down the road of best health for them. It's interesting, when a survey was done of medical doctors, these were primarily family practitioner, internal medicine, allergy, pediatrician, and rheumatology doctors, as well as some infectious disease specialists and preventive medicine doctors, they were asked, what's the primary reason that you're a doctor? 34%, about a third, of the young doctors said, I went into the specialty that I went into. I became a doctor because patient relationships are important to me, and that's what I want for my career. About a quarter, 26%, said, I became a doctor because I'm just good at it, and I love doing the diagnosis and figuring out the puzzle. That's why I became a doctor. 15% of young medical doctors said they became a doctor because they just wanted to make a lot of money. And 13% said they became a doctor because they just wanted to make the world a better place. I so wish that I could do that same survey with young chiropractic students. And somehow, I think that those numbers would be skewed in a very different direction. I think a higher percentage would say that they want to make the world a better place. I think a higher percentage would say patient relationships. And I don't know about the 15% of medical doctors who said, I became a doctor because I want to make a lot of money. I'd be really curious what the students in chiropractic school or the young chiropractors were saying about that. I sincerely hope that it's even less than 15% who said, I just want to make a lot of money. But the study hasn't been done, so I don't know. What I do know is information from a website called The White Coat Investor, which deals with the finances of doctors. Now, it's all doctors, but primarily medical doctors, says that one of the biggest problems with doctors, like so many other people, is they don't accumulate enough money to pay for their retirement the way that they want it to look like. A survey was done in Medscape where they asked doctors about their net worth. And when they looked at their net worth, they really zeroed in and said, it's everything. It's the cars. It's the vacation homes. It's your primary home. It's the money in your investing accounts, your retirement, the whole ball of wax, minus any debts and outstanding loans that you have. And here's what they found by age. I found it so interesting. Not surprisingly, under the age of 28, 96% were worth less than $1 million. And that's exactly what you would expect. That other 4%, obviously were trust fund kids of some kind because at age 28 they were already worth more than $5 million. But let's look at the averages. Between the ages of 28 and 34, 92% were still worth less than $1 million, but 8% had grown to somewhere between $1 million and $5 million. Between the ages of 35 and 39, 83% were worth less than $1 million. 17% were worth between $1 and $5 million. Jump up to 40 to 44 range, 64% were less than $1 million, 34% were between $1 and $5 million, and about 2% had gone over $5 million. Between 45 and 49, roughly 50-50. 50% less than $1 million, 47% 1 to 5 million, 3% over 5 million. As they get older, it's interesting what happens. Between ages 50 and 54, medical physicians, 39% of them are still worth less than $1 million. 55% of them were able to grow their wealth to between 1 and 5 million. 6% had gone over the 5 million mark. When you jump up to 55 to 59, 60% are in the 1 to 5 million range. 29% are still down under $1 million. But when you get to the 65 to 69, now these are people who are approaching retirement. 24% of these doctors are still worth less than $1 million. 59% of them are worth between 1 million and 5 million, and 17% have been able to eclipse that 5 million mark. And the 70 and older, these are doctors who are retired, or darn well could be or should be, at least age-wise. Only 25% of them are still worth less than $1 million. This is their house, their practice if they still own it, their retirement accounts, their cars, everything they've got. 54% of those doctors are worth between 1 million and 5 million, and 22%, similar to the age ranges just under it, are over the 5 million mark. So that's where the medical community is. And now imagine if you were earning what those doctors were earning. Remember, the lowest paid medical doctors are earning around $250,000 a year, every year, for like 30 plus years. And the highest paid, the neurosurgeons, plastic surgeons, and orthos, were over $600,000 a year, every year. And somehow they weren't able to save. And the point of this is, you're making what you make. You live the way that you live. How much of it are you saving and putting away? There's a great financial rule about paying yourself first, and I know I mentioned that on one of the earlier episodes that was just titled Money. If you pay yourself first, the money accumulates, especially in your younger days, because it compounds and the money starts to earn money. Money that you put away today will double over about a 10-year period, maybe a little bit less, but then another 10 years, it's doubled again. So that money has multiple opportunities to double and double and double again. And one of my mentors and a previous guest on this show, Dr. Larry Markson, taught me as a very young man the rule that he shared with so many chiropractors, tens of thousands of them, an entire generation of chiropractors, is what he called the 80-20 rule, or the 80-10-10 rule is what he actually called it. You should live on 80% of what you make. Pay your bills, pay your debts, 80%. 10% at a minimum is what you save and put away and never touch. What's the other 10%? Go out and spend it and, be freewheeling and loving and giving with it. 80-10-10. I think those percentages are off a little bit in today's world, and I think the amount that you save, based on everything that I've seen and read and learned from financial experts, the amount that you save into your long-term financial account for your future needs to be 15 or even closer to 20%. So alter, what you're living on and what you're freely spending. But if that's what average doctors make, and that's what average chiropractors make, and none of us, hopefully, became doctors for the money. We became doctors because we wanted to help people, we wanted to have fun, and we wanted to earn a fine living. It really comes back to your technique and how many people are you helping. Because while it's not why we became doctors, it is the way healthcare is, at least in the United States of America. All of healthcare is a bodies for bucks business. I don't like it. I didn't make it up. I'm simply requoting it the way that it was taught to me so many years ago. The more bodies you take care of, the more bucks that you make. And the more responsibility that you take on as a profession, as a professional, the more money that you make also, the more you're rewarded for taking on that responsibility. Because we all get paid based on the value or perceived value, the uniqueness of what it is that we do. The person who collects your trash gets paid a certain amount, and they get paid reasonably well. That is an incredibly important job. Does not require a lot of training and education, does not require a lot of responsibility to be taken on. Show up, take the trash away, move on to the next house. A tradesperson, plumber, electrician, carpenter, has more expertise and commands a higher salary, a higher remuneration for doing a job for you. What about the person who cuts your hair versus when you do their adjustment? Now, there's a fair trade back and forth. You need your hair cut, and depending on your hairstyle, the amount of time that it takes to cut your hair might be similar, or even more than, the amount of times that it takes to provide a fantastic chiropractic adjustment to the person. But yet, while the service is appreciated by both people, the amount of responsibility, the training, the expertise is certainly higher for the chiropractic physician than it is for the person who cuts your hair. And therefore, we have a higher earning potential. So if you want to earn more and live better as a chiropractic physician, I think that's terrific. I think everybody should earn as much money as they choose to, and I think you should practice exactly the way that you want to. Is it about raising your fees? Maybe it is, but not necessarily. I think you get paid for your service to humanity. Serve more people, serve as many people as your heart desires and as your time and technique will allow, and be rewarded richly for providing the care that you do to as many people as you choose to provide care to. A bunch of years ago, there was a concept that floats around called the waiting list practice, or a waiting list practice. You know what? I'm so good. I have people waiting in line to come and see me. That they wait for weeks and weeks and days or months and months. And I think that is horrible. I know there's a lot of doctors who like that, but I think that's horrible. And the reason I think it's horrible is because you have a built-in capacity block. Why should you be keeping people waiting who need and want and are desirous of your help? Do you need more office hours? Maybe you do. But you don't want to work more hours. That's okay. Maybe you need more doctors. Train other doctors to do what you do so that they can be helping people, and you're leveraging it because you're teaching them, so you're getting paid part of that. Make your office bigger so you can see more human beings in the office at any given time. Figure out the capacity block, a previous episode on the podcast, and open up the floodgates so that we're helping as many people as we can, and therefore, not only is your heart satisfied, your financial remuneration is where it should be. And I would love to see the world of chiropractic standing on par financially with the medical community, or at the very, very, very least, at average with the doctoral educated person. But I think it should be a whole lot higher than that as well. All right. And that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.